There's some people, Gretchen, I guess there was a big accident at 18th and Tremont. Oh, she's here? There you are? Okay.
Another one, Gretchen?
You
No.
helicoptered in.
That's still the earlier
You weren't
one.
involved in that one?
So,
Oh, yeah, no, that was someone else's accident this time.
So,
not my
let's
fault.
do,
Not my fault.
okay, you're here. I'm glad you're here.
Yeah.
So let's go around and do introductions real quick. Terrence is not coming tonight because the superintendent had to go out of town and he's running a meeting at DPS. So Liz, let me pass this around. Let's start introductions real quick and let's get started.
Liz Adams, CRL Associates.
Oh,
Gretchen Holler, Executive Director of the Mayor's Office of the National Western Center.
Todd Hawley, Family Environment.
Betty Graham and Swansea area.
Slavica Bog with Focus Points Family Resource Center.
John Slapien, I'm Larry Burgess' neighbor. Here.
Larry Burgess, ESGBA.
Kayla Birdsong with the Grow House.
Dave Leslie, Globeville neighborhood.
Tanya Breeling, Denver Museum of Nature and Science.
Armando Bayan, Globeville, and I'm going to pass around the sign-up sheet for Garden Place Elementary School. We're doing a deep clean over there. And Rhea and some other outstanding folks. I can go on and rave about the NWC-CAC and what you guys have done for this community. From my perspective, it's phenomenal. Please sign.
Good evening, my name is Dan Goldhammer. I'm with CSU, so I'm not Jocelyn Hiddle, but I'm representing CSU, and I'm with actually the Extension Service here in Denver as the horticulture agent.
He's a soil master. I'm very serious. Anna Elizabeth Globeville.
Liliana Flores Amaro, representing Swansea as well as the National Western Authority Board.
Ann Hayes, Westfield Company.
Carrie Atia, Visit Denver.
Paul Andrews, National Western Stock Show and Authority Board.
We missed Mickey. Mickey just walked in.
Mickey Zeppelin.
Thank you.
John McIntyre with Tribe Architects.
Kelly Bird with Populous.
Ed Thomas with Amoresco.
Paul Engel with Amoresco.
Susan Aldretti with Councilwoman Ortega's office.
Xenia Chicago.
Christoph Keim, Forney Museum of Transportation.
Jay Rankins with MIG and the placemaking team.
Eric Anderson, Design Manager for the Mayor's Office of the National Western Center.
Kai Holton Brown, Project Manager for National Western Stock Show.
Sean Snow, I'm the Historic and Cultural Resources Manager for the Mayor's Office of the National Western Center.
Chris Proud with Denver Public Works, supporting the Mayor's Office of the National Western.
Hi, I'm Julie Skeen with CIG, part of the placemaking team.
Beth Vogelsang with OB Consulting, part of the placemaking team.
Hi, I'm Chris Vogelsang. I'm Beth's husband. I'm part of the placemaking team as well.
Michelle Sturm, Community Wealth Building Network and the Denver Anchor Network.
Aaron Harsick with HDR Architects.
Matt Sandman with Kiewit.
Hunter Sidner, KMP Central 70 team.
Did you get everybody?
Yes. Marcy Walker, the Mayor's Office of the National Western Center.
Great. Great. So let's get started. The first thing on the agenda, I think if you recall last time, we did the pretty deeper dive on CSU and all of their projects. We all agreed that we would have a presentation on the National Western Center, the WSA, sorry, Paul, legacy building, which we'll get to that right now. So, Paul, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yes, we are happy to have with us John McIntyre from Tribal Architects, and then you met just moments ago our project manager from the National Western Stock Show that is heading up the construction operations of this building and our liaison for the campus, and that is Kai Holton Brown. So the two of them are far better at presenting this than me, but I'll be happy to answer some questions after if anybody has any. So go ahead and take it away.
What do you need? Oh, let's go get this one.
Okay, I'm going to do a quick introduction here. As Paul said, my name is Kai. I'm the project manager for the National Western Stock Show. I represent our interests. I work very closely with the city. And one of the things that has been really fun about this job has been the legacy building. Some of you who have been involved since the master plan days may remember the master plan didn't have a legacy building. A lot of the functions in it, like the National Western Club was going to be over in another building. The art collection was going to be over possibly in a CSU building. The offices were going to be for the Stock Show Association. We're maybe going to be up in a mezzanine and up in a barn somewhere. And about a year and a half ago, the board of directors for the Stock Show Association said, we want a headquarters building. And we're willing to take our fundraising campaign and increase it to be able to build this legacy building. And so since then, we've gone through some programming, we've gone through some initial, visioning, I guess, and concept design. And it has been a fun journey, and this is a beautiful building. And I'll have to say, I've been having a lot of fun working with Tribal Architects, and some of you who've been watching and are watching the emails that come out from the National Western Center probably have noticed that I have an RFQ out for a construction manager advisor to basically be me for the legacy building. Because as Paul said, I'm working on the main campus as well, and I've got a lot of hats. So we'll be bringing on another team member here soon to work with John, but I've been working with him for the last year on this design, and it has been a great journey, and he's going to share a little bit more about what we're doing. But at the core of it, we are bringing all of the Stock Show Association core functions, our National Western Club, our art gallery, our offices, into a single building. We're going to have our art gallery on the ground floor. People will be able to actually visit and see our art, which is going to be a wonderful thing. So with that, off to John.
Thanks, Kai. And hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. I'm John McIntyre. I'm a principal with Tribal Architects, and I've been working with David Schreiber on this. He sends his apologies. He would have liked to have been here, but had a clash for tonight as well. So I'm going to give you a little update of the vision for Legacy Building. This is early stage, but we've really built a strong vision to support the capital campaign, and I think it's starting to fold really nicely into the broader planning that the team is doing across the site in terms of the master plan. I think most of you can orient yourself on this aerial photo, but where we're proposing to site the Legacy Building is right adjacent to the arena, in fact kind of engaged with the livestock arena, and opposite the historic livestock exchange building. I'm going to try and put my little pointer on it. Here we go. Right in here within the existing site. You'll see that as we work through the site plans. When we started this process of exploring initial concepts, the master plan was a different master plan, and I have to say that we've been very, very excited about the shifts that have been made in the broader plan as time has passed. There was always the concept of engaging the building with the historic livestock exchange, which is this building right in here with its 3 wings, and of fixing the legacy, using it as almost an elevation to the arena building, to really emphasize its presence on the campus and take advantage of some of the scale of the arena building, to really give it a sense of gravitas and presence on Betty Cram. With the latest changes to the master plan, I think everybody's very, very excited about the potential synergy in this kind of main intersection that we're now going to get right off Betty Cram here, and in relationship to the CSU buildings, and really much more of an establishment of a campus along Betty Cram that's going to provide a very active and engaging frontage right along that drive. So we're obviously very excited about the progress that's been made on the master plan to reinforce that crossroads. And the legacy, we think, will act as a kind of a gateway to the campus, the Legacy building. It will sort of provide a gateway into the public space that moves between the arena and the hall and the various CSU functions as well. So it's a really great location, and now within a cluster of sort of related buildings. This is the view from the west, so approaching. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
There'll be one in there somewhere, Armando.
Send that in an email. We'll make sure it gets in there. So this is a western approach from Betty Cram Drive. So the way the building's evolved, it's a 4-story building. I'll take you through what sort of happens inside each of the levels as we get into it. But it has a large kind of projecting western terrace that projects out and gives views out to the mountains. In these early visioning exercises, we're indicating the arena in the background, so you can get a sense of how conceptually the building is designed to kind of work with the arena behind it to form a single building, but have a very activated frontage. So we have the art gallery and entrance at the lower levels. I'll show you a plan of that soon. Above that is a level of office. There's an exhibition floor, and then there is the club level all the way at the top. And all the way down the building is a series of kind of stepped terraces to give opportunities to get from the interior to the exterior. The entrance is conceived of as a kind of a giant porch, this idea of coming into the building and having a really welcoming space, double height at that ground floor. I'll show you some more images of that. That western terrace is designed to kind of extend out from the building and provide a real civic gateway into the site. So this is actually the historic Livestock Exchange building on the right that you're just seeing the corner of. So this is walking past that historic building and looking over to the Legacy building. You can see again the entry. But we're showing 2 entrances, one from Betty Cram and one from this end of the building, which will address the new plaza directly. You can see the western terrace that's extending out with the club level behind, and then another terrace that's up at the exhibition level, where there's a kind of a conference and meeting suite happening as well, and I'll show you that as we go through the plans. We really wanted the building to have a western sensibility, a strong sense of materiality, and the building is designed as such with a combination of weathered steel, heavy timber, glass, obviously, as you can see, the ability to integrate large-scale signage for events, so that we can really show off along Betty Cram what's happening within the building. And then really celebrating the sense of entry with a grand stair that wraps up the building, up again and into the club at the top level. So if we look at the section diagram, that you can see how the uses stack up. There's an area of parking in the back, which I'll show you on plan for parking and service. There's a gallery space that spills out at the edge of Betty Cram with a landscape between the building and the street. There's a layer of office space. There's an exhibition space, which is intended to be aligned with the concourse of the arena. So you can move directly from the arena into the exhibition space, and that will be a large-scale rotating exhibition space. And then up at the top, within this kind of shaped roof form, is the club, which has a variety of different hospitality offers, kitchen, and bar facilities. So I'll show you that when we get to the plan. The intent is for this edge of the Western Club to actually have an overlooking window, almost like a corporate box relationship with the arena. So that from the top floor you get views to the west, you get views back to the city, and you get views into the livestock arena. So if we just go through the plans, we're looking at the ground floor plan. So to orient, here's the South Plaza, and here's Betty Cram Drive running across the base of the building. Oh, sorry, a little quick. You can see the entry and circulation in here with reception, the entrances, and the grand stair leading up. A large fireplace within that space. We really want it to be a space of hospitality and welcome. And for cold stock show nights, a place where everybody can gather around a fire and get some comfort at that ground floor. The National Western Art Collection will be housed off the end of that lobby and entry at ground level addressing the street. There's a heritage gallery There's a retail space that will activate the plaza edge to the west plaza, and you're seeing the porch extending, the terrace, sorry, extending above this, with some ideas about potentially fire pits and some of these things happening within the landscape as well. A service core, and then parking access from the east with this courtyard that provides additional surface parking and service access to the arena up above. So this is an image, an initial image of that porch or lobby space, with the idea of a real space of hospitality, the ability to integrate art, this grand stair kind of moving up to the next office level up above, the entry and welcome space moving into the heritage gallery behind. Here's the elevators running up the building, the core in the rear, and access through to parking in the gallery space at the end of this volume. So we have a sort of a lounge space indicated with this grand fireplace, and this is the entry that would come in from Betty Cram. Again, warm Western materials. We're thinking about local stones. We're thinking about wood, steel, and a strong materiality. At the next floor up, you can see when you land at the top of that stair that we just saw in the view, you move into the lobby space, and from there into an office floor. So this floor would be the offices for the Western Stock Show Association. One more floor up, you continue up that same stair, and you land on the exhibition floor. The exhibition floor also has a conference and meeting suite, which can be used for breakout if there's large events happening in the exhibition space, or can be used by the office users on the floor below, who would come up and use that space. Again, essentially serviced core with the vertical transportation and elevators, bathrooms happening in through this zone, storage attached to the exhibition space, and the ability to link directly to the concourse level. So you would get views out this side, back to Betty Cram, and views through to the arena with the ability to run events off the arena concourse. And then all the way up at the top of the building is the Western Club. And that has a pre-function space down on the southern side, which looks back out to the city. It has a terrace attached to that space. It has a Western terrace with the Western Lounge in the back. There's a series of bars, importantly, 1, 2, 3 that service the pre-function space, the main ballroom space, and the Western Lounge. There's large circulation, obviously, because we have a high assembly use. And this is this idea of this projecting window that extends out into the arena to give that overlook into the arena itself. There's a private dining room in this location. There's a lounge zone in here, large-scale fireplaces here and here with lounges, and then the ability to house up to 800 in a ballroom configuration within that space. Kitchen facilities are in through the rear with a service elevator that links directly down to the ground floor. So this is a sense of that space, which is a heavy timber space with a large high ceiling and heavily structured wood elements, these large fires in the end of it. And again, this idea of a real space of hospitality for large-scale events, but that can be broken down into for smaller scale events in a variety of different configurations.
Is that Betty Cram?
Sorry.
Is that Betty Cram?
Right
Yes.
there.
Yes, let's say yes.
There you are, Betty. There you are, Betty, right there.
Looks like she's headed for the fire.
Looking hot to try. Into VIP.
That's really helpful.
And here's a view on that western terrace that's looking out towards the Rockies. So here, this ability to have this really strong connection to the western views. You're elevated up. We've got this view over the low foreground of the city and out to the Rockies. CSU will be in the lower foreground of this with their buildings. As the terrain steps down, there's the opportunity for fire pits out on this terrace and the ability to enjoy the bar, which is just inside at the Western Lounge. There's some holes in the top of this thing that let the light come through, and then it's just a big, comfortable space for hospitality on the outdoors with a really strong connection from interior to exterior. So this maybe just is an illustrated section to give you a little bit more of a sense of how that building works within the relationship to the arena. So you can see the arena seating, exhibition, office, and the club space up in here. This is an older image, and it doesn't have the gallery in this zone, but the gallery will sit right in this zone in here at the lower level. So that gives you a sense of how that space might be occupied with the ability to move backwards and forwards to the concourse level from the exhibition space. There is a model, and it's in this building somewhere. It's in the VIP room at the moment. So if you want to take a look at the model, there's a nice big model. You can get your head down and take a look inside it and get a real sense of how the spaces work. And we're at an exciting stage now of just starting to think about how we might be able to integrate elements of the stockyards as part of the capital campaign, finding ways for sponsorship and the kind of material language of the stockyards to find its way into the building. So one idea here is about bricks, using some of the existing bricks from the stockyards in the space. Another idea that we've developed is this, with the team, is this idea of the wall of brands. This idea of a space where you can actually have your brand embedded into a leather wall and really get some tactile sort of moments happening throughout the building. And that's a little summary of where we're at these initial stages.
Right? Questions? Comments?
This is admittedly kind of a political question. So,
Uh-oh, I might have to give it to Carl.
given the beautiful western view of the mountains, is there any way through the, is it horizon preservation? What's that term? Is there any way we can leverage not allowing outrageous skyscrapers to obstruct that in the downtown Denver footprint? What's it called?
View planes.
View planes. I mean, does this make a legitimate? Is this a legitimate part of that drumbeat, possibly?
Well,
I know you're an architect, but I'm putting you on the spot.
there's probably somebody here who's better equipped to answer that question. I think that there's a the views are probably relatively well protected, just given both the topography, the drop, the river in the foreground, and the scale of likely development on the other side. So I don't think that that's an issue that necessarily warrants massive protection. There's definitely some coordination with the CSU development, as that happens in the foreground, and working through the levels associated with that. But I don't know if anybody else has a comment on that side of it.
There's two view plane ordinances. One that comes from the Capitol, and one that comes from basically downtown where the museum is, the city park. And I mean, crafting. What I hear you say is, can we craft another one?
I'm game. Yeah, we did create a zoning.
Actually, there's a couple of more.
I think there's one from 51st and Zunai between Ford's downtown that may protect this area.
So it's it's worth a discussion. It's got.
Well, yeah, I mean,
One of the existing ones.
the problem is, it's a longer conversation, and I think it's much more complicated. Yeah.
I just want to, about the bricks, I've heard you quickly mention the possibility of using bricks, as which I think is great. At the board authority meeting, the hay barn number 3 came up, and it is being studied thoroughly, and I am in support of supporting the economy of the stock show. After all things are considered, it may need to be dismantled and moved. And it occurred to me during that meeting what a wonderful use of those bricks to spread them all over the footprint and incorporate them into the, something to talk about. Now, this is all premature, but we've learned hard lessons about not talking about things early on. So I think it would be incredible to get a fast inventory of all these bricks that are accumulating from these different places, because the legacy building could create a timeline, and you could recreate a map of the heritage site by where you place the bricks and catalog them in that building.
Other questions?
Nikki's got one.
Oh, okay.
My first question is this intended to be to set the vocabulary for the entire campus? This is the first building. We have a large number of buildings coming. Is this the vocabulary? What's the iconic element that really we're going to be taking through the rest of the campus, or is this just a standalone kind of building?
Actually, I believe Eric might be able to answer better as far as how the campus cultural plan and the zones are, but this is within a zone that we are working closely with the National Western Center to establish a good architectural vocabulary.
So when we went through the cultural plan, we had those different character areas for the campus. This building will sit in one of those character areas. And Jay and his team are now in the process of defining what happens in those character areas in the future. So these guys are a little bit ahead of us on the design standards and guidelines. We'll obviously take what they've done into account and see how it can fit. But again, we're trying to put together guidelines for the whole campus so that we don't have one-off buildings. But again, the materials that they're using and those kind of things I think can all fit with what we're doing. We just need to look at the architectural style and see if it's going to work.
Okay, and I guess I'm just questioning if this is the material and the look of the entire campus. I find it rather disappointing in terms of creating really an iconic kind of world-class kind of building in terms of the way it looks. I mean, it could fit anywhere. I mean, I think programmatically it seems to be working fantastically. I'm just looking at architecture that is not doing.
And I think we're at obviously early stages too. This is like, we're not this is an initial concept and vision, and I think that we'll be looking to react both to the evolving program of the building and to the evolving designs that emerge for the other parts of the campus. So we're not done by any means in terms of what this building is. This is, I think, a strong initial vision, but it will obviously develop alongside the balance of the language for the campus.
Hey, Mickey, also, just to clarify, this is not the first building. This building isn't funded. We have to raise $100 million before that building becomes real. Today, we're at $22 million. So until we're at $100 million, that building won't be started.
Well, you know, I always look at buildings as kind of the inspiration. I'm just saying that looking at the building from the exterior is really critical at this point to provide that inspiration of really going into a whole innovative new area and creating some excitement.
And I think, are you at 5% design? What is that design number, would you say?
Yeah, maybe a 5.
Okay.
We're very early.
Right.
You know, very early. So I think it's there's a long way to go, Mickey, and I think there'll obviously be a lot of discussion around the building as it evolves, and to make sure that it's reflecting what it needs to reflect in terms of the values of the organization, and does the job that it needs to do in terms of becoming an iconic gateway to the campus, which I'm completely in agreement with you on. Thank you.
CNC's water building, that's
First.
building.
That's first. The Water Resources Building is first.
Do we have anything on that?
We had a presentation last time, Mickey, on the whole CSU campus. They're in the process of selecting an architect, which they did. If you recall correctly, Jocelyn walked us through that, and they are, I think they've selected one. They have not announced it yet, but I think they shortlisted and went through interviews. So they're at the stage of even selecting an architect.
Just to pick up on Mickey's school of thought there, there's on your parking, I didn't see any multimodal transportation methodology there. I understand this is one of your first iterations, but it'd be cool to see some self-programmable cars where people can get off the light rail, get on a programmable car, and go over in front of the lanes. Some of those cool and innovative things, like Mickey said, things that are iconic. This is, to me, one of the best facilities in the world. And you need to take us all there. And they need to create that wow. And I don't really see that right now, but to me, that's just like another house in Fresno, shooting evergreen. I haven't been all over the world, but it's just, I don't see the wow factor. I'm sure you guys will get there.
Yeah, well, hopefully we'll be aiming to get there. So.
Other questions? Nothing else?
I have
John?
some comments, but I'll save them for later.
Are they related to the building?
Yeah, but just move on with this.
Okay.
I'll bring them up at different times.
All right. You want to say anything else about the building, Paul, before we move on?
No.
Okay.
Wow.
Whoa.
That was crazy. Sorry. Doesn't know what's happening.
All right, thank you. Okay, yeah. So, authority board reports, you have the written pieces from History Colorado. Mark is not here. Anything else you just need to say that's not written on the board, on the report from CSU?
Yeah, there was just another quick update from Tiana that Little Shop of Physics is coming to Bruce Randolph on October 18th, and then also working with Bruce Randolph
On a pipeline to college initiative.
so it's exciting, and there'll be much more details to come soon.
All right, thank you.
Wait, I just got a question on that. Can you explain the physics deal again?
The little Shop of Physics?
Yeah.
So it's like a hands-on, immersive STEM education geared towards kids.
Great. What age group?
I think it can be tailored.
Okay. Can you share that with those of us who work with young people in the neighborhood? That'd be helpful.
Okay, I'll make sure.
Yep.
Do you want just what it is and dates? Or
Yep, and how people can get involved so we can send it to our list, contacts in the neighborhood.
I guess it's in. I'll get it to you. It's in the back of the of some of the CSU stuff and the CSU stuff. And there's a flyer, so we'll get that also out. Mark, perfect timing. 2 meetings in a row. You walk in just as when I've said, "Oh, I'm not sure History Colorado's here," right? So
I try to time it perfectly.
that's right.
Mark Robin from History Colorado. I just wanted to mention a program that we're having in mid-July. It's a STAMP program. It's a social justice program. And we're going to be having middle and high school students in this, the GES neighborhood. They're going to be working with Denver Urban Gardens, and they're also going to be visiting the Grow House. So anyway, that's my quick update.
All right. Any other updates because we're going to talk about the fair?
No, not really.
Okay.
I mean, I can, but.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, everybody knows we're having July 13 and 14, the Denver County Fair here, so the advertising plan kicks into full gear in early July, so you should see it, start seeing it irritating you on TV, radio, and so forth very soon. So we're very excited. We think we can break last year's record of attendance. And those of you that like vinyl, we have a vinyl arrival on Friday night. Guy coming in here with 5,000 vinyl records, ready to sell them to everybody at 99 cents a piece. So anyway, he's kind of got a cool deal going. He guarantees me 5,000 people are coming to buy his vinyl. So we're going to see that. So.
Don't you going to do it?
Yes, Maria would like me to talk about the chicken agility contest, but if you have a chicken and you think it's agile, please bring it down here, put it in. The crowd behind me would like to know more about goat yoga. Goat yoga is on. We'll be setting the world record, the Guinness Book of World Records for goat yoga, over 500 participants. The old record was, I think, 300, which we held last year. So, anyway, looking forward to it.
Can you give us a couple example moves?
Well, if I told you the chicken agility moves, it would give your chicken an unfair advantage. So I don't want to have you come down here with an unfair advantage. But anyway, it ought to be a lot of fun, and hopefully it's not 105 degrees.
Yeah.
Maria, thank you.
Okay, all right. Sorry, I had to bring that up because I did think it was so interesting. So Liliana and John, let's go to the National Western Center Authority report. The floor is yours.
The authority is in motion, moving, and please correct me, Paul and Liana, if I go too far, don't go far enough. Okay? Actually, it's something to be on an authority board and with very little authority at this point. But we are moving. We're in the process of now getting a CEO. There's down to 4 finalists, and thanks to Paul, Dr. Frank from CSU, they've done the preliminary sorting, screening, and they'll be presenting those to the authority. The authority is in the process also of looking to secure the services of an attorney. We need an attorney to guide us, keep us from getting too far into hot water, so to speak. The issues facing us are varied, many, but we can only deal with them one step at a time. And please step in at any time, correct me. It's my feeling right now, until we get a CEO on board and get moving, then we can start then exercising a little more authority and coordinating with the projects that are going to be in motion. And I'm not going to go into that because you can get a more detailed account by those that will make their presentations later in the evening here. The main thing at this point now is questions that are arising. The bridges across the river are going to be talked about soon, and this morning at the authority meeting, I said, I feel so strongly, Mr. Brooks, Elvis, that I think before any decisions made on the bridges itself, we should have a public meeting in the Glowville neighborhood so that people will be fully informed and aware. I don't want the bridge, the two bridges that are going to be built across the Platte River, to meet the same or some type of opposition that was with the Glowville Landing whole city park drainage effort. That was, could have been handled a lot different. But it's in motion, it's being done. So I'm acutely aware of some feelings in the neighborhood about the bridges. And I have some personal feelings about the bridges themselves. I just don't want just another bridge. It's got to be an iconic bridge type thing, an Acropolis of Globeville, so to speak. You know, we don't just want something to move traffic. We're talking, as we did before, connectivity, culturally collected for past generations that lived and worked in these neighborhoods. The other issues, I think, will be adequately dealt with by the folks that are going to be following their report. We've got a couple other things. Subcommittees are going to be meeting. Monique is here, and Liliana will speak to that, I suppose. Anything else that I see, we will have a CEO, hopefully. The dates on that, Paul?
The end of July is the target date.
Yes, okay. So, the authority may soon really have some authority. Liliana, anything else you want to fill in?
No, I just wanted to add, so in addition to the CEO and the hiring council, we're also looking into hiring some sort of executive operations, some sort of other personnel to help support the process along. So there'll be 3 group hires that'll be happening hopefully pretty soon to help support the process. So as John mentioned, we do have a date for the community benefits agreement committee of the authority board, and Monique is here, so I want to acknowledge Monique, who's the chair of that committee. I'm also on that committee along with Pat Grant, and so that initial meeting is set for July 17th from 8 to 9:30 a.m. We're going to have it here somewhere in the building. We'll send out those details when we have the specific room. In the VIP room. Okay, thank you, Paul. And so that'll be our first initial meeting. We'll work on creating an agenda for that. But pretty much where we're at, I think I've shared this with you all before. The committee is really sort of in an education phase, just learning about the different types of community benefit agreements and figuring out, our process is going to be unique. It's not going to be like any other community benefits agreement process anywhere. in the world, really. And so we just have a lot to learn. And we're looking forward to digging in alongside you all around what kind of process might make sense to make sure that we're inclusive of all of the voices in the neighborhood. So I'll pass the mic on to you.
One more thing. Good evening. I'm Monique Lovato, and I'm an authority board member, and I've agreed to chair this community benefits agreement. My day job is I'm the CEO at Mikasa Resource Center, and Liliana's right. This is going to be very different than other community benefits agreements that are out there around the country, because this isn't just between a developer and a community. This is an entire master plan, and so we're excited to get started, but we do have to ask your patience a little bit. Also, I want to make sure that we are clear that there's a difference between a community benefit agreement and a community investment fund. I know that those terms have been kind of used interchangeably. They're very different, and a community investment fund, right now there are no funds. So we have to figure out what that also is going to look like. So some of the key questions that we'll be exploring with the community are: who's going to sign for the community? How is everyone going to be held accountable? What is the governance structure going to look like? So as Liliana said, we're educating ourselves first and the authority board, and we should be able to do some of the education with the whole community. Again, starting kind of at the end of the summer. And I know that's kind of lines up with when we'll also have a CEO and have some of that staff in place. And I ask your patience too, because we are all volunteers. And so once we have a staff, I think things might move a little bit faster, because we'll have some help to keep things moving when things get busy for each of us as individuals. So thank you, and I will pass it on to you next or answer any questions if there are any.
John, go ahead.
Yes, just one more thing. I'm glad that you made the statement, because I was going to ask you a distinct difference between the benefits program and the financial. So those are separate and totally different, two different things. And it's important that those in the neighborhood, we understand that. So we need to be empowered to move on that, and that's going to entail some more at a later date and detail. The next thing that the date on that again?
17th for
July
our...
17th?
Yes.
For your committee, right, okay.
8 to 9:30.
Other than that, if anything else comes up, we'll certainly, update you as important as it is, as we go along, if we feel. Special alert bulletin type thing. That's okay with you, Maria?
Hi.
Okay,
Armando.
thank you.
I was going to ask for a question.
How do you see Joe Garcia, the new CEO, being involved in your...
Joe is as the leader of the authority board, he is part of every subcommittee. But again, he's a volunteer and has a full-time job. So we keep tabs. I mean, as the committee chair, I let him know what's going on. I'm sure once we get started with a public process, when we actually are working with community, I'm sure that Joe will probably be involved at a little bit, broader level. Plus, Joe is just moving back to Denver right now, and he'll be running the community college system. So once he's back in this community, I think he'll also have a little bit more bandwidth to be able to get involved with this group and the broader group that will represent the process for the community benefit agreement.
Just a comment on that?
No.
Liz is here.
I didn't know Joe Garcia.
Liz, can you?
I knew of him. I didn't know him. The only other person I know on the authority is Liana, because we work together here, and she lives in the neighborhood. And Paul, obviously. But what I see on the authority is a unique assemblage, and Mayor did a good job in his determining the criteria that we sent to him as the type of people that we'd like to see on that authority. So from what I see, I see everyone on that authority as having confidence in our chairman, Joe Garcia. He's able, and he's certainly has leadership abilities, and he conducts a good meeting and doesn't let it too far one way or the other. I feel confident that the other authority members feel the same way I do about the rest of us on that committee. We're looking forward to developing a better and more in-depth working relationship. We're brand new at this, never worked with some of the other individuals there before, so I look forward to really exercising the authority once we get the resources we need. Thank you.
Any questions of any of the 4 board authority members who are here? Monique or Liliana, Paul or John? And I hope you knew Pat Grant before your first authority meeting.
Yes.
Okay, I was just checking in. Just checking in, John.
Pat and I,
Yeah.
we go back further than learning.
Any other questions? Yes, Peggy.
Joe made an incredible observation to reinforce everything that John just said at the authority board when he, after listening to Colorado State University give a very excellent update on the partnerships and that they were talking about some of the programming classes and that they were going to provide an advanced degree in agriculture. He brought up, has the project approached the community colleges for ranges of education that involve apprenticeship certifications and things that lead directly, more quickly to jobs. We've got somebody there that I think has his feet on the ground. And I was myself really grateful. I think we also have to realize the opportunity that when you get stable economy, that whatever the jobs are that create the stable economy, every single one of the people on the that has a desire, that's doing construction, has certifications, can have a dream and get on a track to an advanced research science degree or whatever. And this all leads to, you know, the same inspiration. So I just wanted to add that, and that I had talked to Liliana a little bit afterwards about wishing that the conversations about education that are going on could be opened up more and there could be more of a loop back to this group, because CSU sponsored an education exploration. They're getting into conversations about lifelong learning, what the content of their buildings, their programming is going to be. So not tonight, there's too much, but I feel like if we could somehow have that more transparent and really get more conversation going. There's a lot of people that I think are interested in the nitty-gritty education on the CAC that can get really creative and future-looking.
Okay.
Thank you for the reminder. Yeah, I was going to mention it, so I'm glad you did.
Whatever you want to say, what did you want to say?
No, I mean, yes, I think we'll need to figure out some feedback loops for that. I know Paul invited me to be to just jump in on their education committee. I know John went to the other education planning programming that I wasn't able to go to. So I think we just have to figure out what those feedback loops are and make sure we're coming back.
Okay, any other questions, comments? All right, we are now going to turn it over to Ms. Gretchen.
All right, thanks everybody. I'm going to go through the director's report pretty briefly. We continue to have a lot of placemaking material to run past you and a lot to share with you tonight and some significant details. So let me start by thanking folks for coming to the special meeting we hosted a week ago Monday on the campus cultural plan. We had good attendance. We had great feedback on that. A lot of discussion also around the historic elements of the campus. And AE, to the point you made earlier about materials and reuse, that's part of the placemaking team's work right now, is to consider the adaptive reuse of those historic materials and embed them into the campus fabric. Also, John, for bridges, Following up from this morning and today, so folks know, we are working on the technical specifications for the bridges right now, largely related to floodplain issues, the levee, what the general structure of those need to be. What I'd like to ask our team to do is follow up on this, both to share that as we are able to get further along and move to initial design, but also ideas on how we can use some of our dollars on design and on the 1% for Art program to incorporate something that is an iconic and recognizable feature as we connect to the neighborhood, and how do we get the neighborhoods to participate in that. So I'm hopeful we can go and brainstorm that before we have a community conversation and bring both of those elements together. As a heads up, Brad Dodson, who's my deputy director, is not here tonight. He is just coming in from out of town today, but he will be here in place of me next month. I've been asked to be the speaker at the reception on the river for the Greenway Foundation. It's the exact same time. So I wish I could be here, but I wanted to be sure to talk about our campus and what we're doing along the river with that large group of folks. Moving on to the outreach, if you notice in the back of the room, we've got some boards here for the 1909 Historic Stadium Arena study. This is something that we brought out to the NWC-CAC event that happened last weekend, and hopeful that we can get your input. It should just take a couple of minutes on your way out the door. It's going to help inform the team that's doing work on that project. In addition, I've asked our team to send the summary reports of those meetings to Liz, and then send those out electronically to this group. So there's a lot of detail about what's going on in those studies, and thanks to AE for the suggestion to get those out there. So if you don't have time to go to those meetings, you're able to track their progress around the structural work of the building and the market and the ideas about a public market for that building. So please take a look at the boards. For procurement and construction, I'm going to keep these two bullets on. I don't actually have updates. Significant updates today for the energy RFQ or the triangle. Most importantly for energy, just a note to everyone, and this is also on our website, that we did issue the RFQ. We got great responses. We have shortlisted to 4 firms. They are Amoresco, also here in the audience, NG, NRG, and AECOM. We expect to have an RFP out within a day or two, tomorrow. To continue that process. We've presented on that pretty extensively here, but if you have questions about that, just let me know. And on the triangle, which is the future phases of development, I've been working with Maria to save time on these agendas for the months of August, September, October, so that we can come back here and continue to provide information as we begin to develop materials. There's an article in the paper today that I recommend folks read on the city's Performance-Based Infrastructure Office, PBI office. That's the organizing structure at the city. And to understand the roles, then our proposed project and development would use the system that's being put forward by underneath that city structure and in discussions with city council. So essentially we're in an agency role, sponsoring agency role. But just in case you had questions about that. Marcy, we've also got another procurement that we just wanted to make folks aware about.
Yes,
Stockyard Event Center.
Thank you.
So 2 RFP updates. We sent out the maintenance and operations renovation. We sent that out for designer about a month or so ago. We have a recommended award to SCH Inc. So when we get them through City Council, they'll get started on the design of the new maintenance facility. An RFP that is going to hit the streets tomorrow is for the stockyards. So that, or not the RFP, the RFQ for the stockyards will be going out for design tomorrow. Did you want me to cover 2 more the Brighton updates?
Sure.
So I'm just going to go along real quick on a couple of construction updates. Last month we heard from Saunders Construction, our integrated demolition contractor, on the schedule of demolition. They've got their NTP, so notice to proceed this week. So they will be starting on their demolition, and I have a handout that is up there. Looks like this, just talks a little bit about demolition, but it's going to start talking about some of the first facilities that are going to come down. And as they talked about last month, those are mostly fences and garages and things for safety and to go along with the Brighton reconstruction project. Along with the Brighton reconstruction, that extended detour has been in place for about a week. It was not responding exactly, or the traffic wasn't really responding exactly how I liked it. We were having some backups and trains and things like that. So we are adding additional flaggers, we're adding some additional signage, and then we're going to open up an additional route, not through the neighborhoods, to help alleviate some of the traffic when the trains come through. But we aren't going to put that into place until after the Denver County Fair. We don't want to create a behavior early, change it, create another behavior. So we're going to keep things as they are right now until the Denver County Fair with some additional folks moving people through. So you'll see a lot of flaggers and activity out there, and hopefully we will continue to keep people on the right route. And that is all.
Drew? We need to, okay, Drew, go ahead. Talk loud before we get you the mic.
Marcy, and Tim Sandos needs to hear that, and I think Alice as well. Marcy, thank you for your email last week explaining the rerouting of traffic through Elyria, which is supposed to be down 46th Avenue. This past weekend, we had an extremely dangerous situation. We had tow trucks, this was Friday and Saturday night, racing down 47th Avenue. Brighton Boulevard north of 47th Avenue is closed. These were tow trucks that were just, it's like they hit the lotto with, from towing downtown. And what they do, it was mostly Wyatt's Towing, is they race from where they pick up the cars to the tow yards, and then they race back. And they were doing this down 47th Avenue, blowing through stop signs, going probably 40, 45 miles an hour through a residential neighborhood. There's kids playing in the street, there's dogs wandering around. I couldn't believe it. I just happened to follow one just coming home. And a lot of people saw this. We don't know what the hell to do about this. But this is why it's towing. But what you need to do is put the big signs that you did at Brighton Boulevard that direct traffic, show people where the lanes are. You need to do that at 46th Avenue and direct tow trucks down that street if that is the route. Because this is, we're going to have a serious injury on our hands if this is not addressed immediately. And I want to know what fine is there that the city imposes on tow trucks or any truck that violates it. Furthermore, I think it's Claude Court, I saw down my street, High Street, a semi with just the trailer sort of wandering down High Street onto 46th Avenue, or it's the street at the end of it. Lost, obviously. And then later, there was a full semi. The name on the semi says England. You've probably seen them all around, these semis. Stuck on Claude Court, north of 47th Avenue. People took photos of it. What the hell is a semi doing in Elyria? This was in the evening that I noticed it. I was at an event till about 7:30, and I came home about 8:30, and I saw this. But this is just, the construction of the highway hasn't even begun yet. And this is the crap we have going on.
So Drew, I'm going to look into this a little bit more, because we do have a car, too, that is during business hours, that is helping direct not only the flaggers, but a car, some lights, and so that's really bringing some attention to some of the traffic. But I will, I'm going to
Talk to the tow truck people, we'll get out there, and then B, we'll see about some additional, some police that can do some
I
help.
called the police.
But they can do some additional enforcements,
and
yeah.
District 2 says, yeah, we'll send an officer. Oh, you could call Wyatt's Towing on Monday.
Tim?
So in response to, I beg your pardon, in response to that, we have heard about that actually directly from other folks. We've
big on working with the police department about enforcement and other things that we can do to enforce anybody that's there. And we're looking at doing that in addition to what District 2 would probably be able to do themselves. So we can be very focused, in particular on the front end of any kinds of projects like this where we're seeing heavy truck traffic, other alternative traffic that's driving through the community that shouldn't be there. So we have begun working on that.
This also, was this last weekend, tow trucks?
This was last Friday and Saturday.
There was a lot of activity going on in the neighborhood, in fact, around the Langueton Noir with some people with some stolen cars and things. And so I have a feeling that some of these tow trucks may have been a part of that. I'll look into it some more, but
There was excess traffic.
Yeah.
But why is it even allowed?
it was, I know it was a really crazy weekend from the reports that I got, and the stock show even, I think you guys had a crazy weekend as well, so.
We did.
But we'll, yeah, we're gonna, I'm gonna wanna fix that.
I saw your map, 47th Avenue is not.
No. The map on 40,
Well,
no.
it's not getting
You're going, I know, that's what I said, I was definitely not getting the response that I wanted this week from the new revised detour, so we're going to Plan B and Plan C, and we're going to fix it. And I am in close coordination with CDOT too, in Central 70 on the 46th, and so we're really in close coordination on that, making sure that what works right now continues to work later as well, so.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Thank you. So we will move on, we'll go back to phases 1 and 2 to Gretchen. Before we do that, though, Gretchen did mention about the triangle. This morning, the City Council held a public workshop on the PBI office. I attended it. I will send out to everybody the link that was distributed to City Council from the meeting this morning. It's pretty extensive as to how the PBI office is planning on working and be able to do that. So we'll send that out this week. It's a pretty lengthy document. It's about 20 or 30 pages. But I think as we start talking about this work project on the triangle, I think it's important that you all also understand what the actual documentation has been presented to council. I think this is the second meeting you guys have already had on this, and there's going to be more coming up.
Make sure people know what it.
Yeah.
Do you know does everybody know what a PBI is? It's the public-private partnership office that's really going to vet these projects from a community and citywide perspective. So just to make sure you guys know what that is.
Great. Okay, Gretchen.
Okay. So I wanted to start here on phases 1 and 2 before we jump into placemaking with 2 updates. One, I'm actually going to start with land acquisition. It's one of our early tasks. It's going to tie into this dashboard that I'm going to pass out, and it's a way to show you how the dashboard works. So you can track this dashboard we've developed as a way to show you what we're doing on the capital build construction for phases 1 and 2. So actually, let me do the land and then I'll pass, because as soon as I pass it out, you're going to look at that and stop listening to me, because I know this happened this morning at the authority. So for land, just as a reminder, and this is really something that we cover every quarter at the Land Use Transportation Infrastructure Committee for Denver City Council. It is televised on Channel 8. We give an enormous amount of program information there. You'll see this dashboard there. You'll see our land updates. Part of this is an advertisement for me to try to get folks there. It's recorded. You can watch it at home. You don't have to be at the meeting. You can watch it later online. It's a huge resource for information. So as we do not have 5 hours here every time, I would really encourage folks to go there. And then we can use some of this time to bring up questions from the overviews that we're presenting. But as a reminder on land, we have 32 of 38 planned properties under city control for construction. We also have all of the Western Stock Show Association land was transferred early to the city. So that is now, it's a big accomplishment that we've got control of the land we need to proceed with construction. We are working on discussions with the Denver Rock Island Railroad. Those are some of the parcels that we need to acquire. I'd like to report those discussions have been productive, both on design and on land, financial, and other terms. We hope to have a contract with them before the end of the year, but that remains to be seen as our discussions progress. And then last, now let's hand this out because there's land is included in our horizontal portfolio. I've got copies for the audience. I really wanted everybody to get a copy. Nope, this set goes this way. Marcy, you've got the audience copies. This set goes this way. Everybody should get one of these. This is something we're going to present, and I wanted to spend a little time on. This is what you'll see us present quarter over quarter. So if you want to know, hey, what happens with the $765 million construction project over 7 years, this is how you can track it and see how we are moving forward. So as folks have it, I'll start at the top of the dashboard. We're going to provide accomplishments both from an overview across our large portfolios, both site-wide work, horizontal and vertical. So as an example, on the horizontal, you can see continued land acquisition that we are 82% complete. So this should be a sheet where you see a lot of the facts that you need to track our progress. In addition, if you look to the right, we have key performance indicators, KPIs, across our program. These are how we measure our success, starting with health, safety, security, and environment. You'll see we have much more detail behind these and how we track them, but we're using color coding to show you if we're on track or not. If we're not, we'll spend more time working through these. I'm also happy to have our team do a deep dive on any of this. It's a tremendous amount of information we're putting in front of you. Cost, schedule, design, community. Renew is around our environmental goals and the goal of regeneration that was put in the master plan. And concurrent operations are very important so that we have a stock show that continues to operate on this campus while it's under construction. In the middle, you'll see major contracts and procurement status. So you can see where we've got the capacity of the contracts that are moving forward and the timing for the future contracts. So when Marcy's reporting out on when we're announcing these contracts, you'll see it track against this part of the dashboard. The financial summary to the right of that with the blue, orange, gray, and yellow bars really shows you that $765 million budget and what we have in current funding. So that 227 was the city's initial $200 million debt issuance in 2016. That was made as revenue bonds from the voter-approved 2C ballot measure of excise taxes. We will continue to issue debt against that revenue stream. It also includes the delivery of CSU funds to the city per the framework agreement, $27.7 million on April 2nd of this year. And then you can see our commitments. Those are contractual guarantees, and then our actual expenditures. That's checks going out the door for work that's been done on the campus. We've got some great pictures. I will be honest, they're both for your enjoyment and as placeholders, as we know we have future information to load onto this dashboard. But we did want to show you some of the Brighton Boulevard construction. That's the bridge at Race Court and the pouring of concrete on that top layer. The brick by brick deconstruction of 4701 Brighton Boulevard that we've talked about here. And I don't know what the bottom right picture is. And David Richards was out of the office today, so I did not get to ask him. Below that, you'll see budget, commitment, and cost by project WBS. WBS is work breakdown structure. It's really what we call a project level commitment. And we've got that rolled into planning and design studies, horizontal, vertical, and program-wide. We will continue to break that down once we have finished land acquisition and our discussions on rail. And you'll see through the course of the 7 years this be broken down into additional components. One of the next ones we'll break out is Brighton Boulevard construction. You can see the budget for that, also adding to the $765 million, the commitment and the cost, and noting that most of the expenses and costs we've paid to date are on horizontal. Most of those are related to the land acquisition that's been going on for the past couple of years. We also show a percent complete across from that. And then you can see CPI and SPI. These are terms of art in industry on program management. They are cost performance index and schedule performance index. A 1.0 means we are on the mark. If you see it get larger or smaller, it means we are behind or ahead of schedule or cost commitments. So that's really one of the most important tools on this sheet to track how we're doing and how we're performing as a city construction team with our contractors. Last, we've got key schedule milestones below with baseline finish dates and actual finish dates. That's a tool we use to show some of the accomplishments going forward on the campus, when you can expect them, and how we're hitting against those benchmarks. So we obviously, as a program team, have lots of dense material that informs this sheet. We believe we've used as a city this tool, something very similar for our 2007 Better Denver Bond General Obligation Program. It's a tool that City Council has seen before. We believe it's the right tool to use for these public presentations going forward, but if you have comments, if there's something else you see here that you think would help, both in terms of acronyms that we've got on here and public presentation, we'll continue to refine this. Today's the first day that we are really sharing this, so we shared it with the authority board this morning. What we bring to the authority board, we bring to the CAC in the evening, and this is our draft template, but it has real data in it. If we make a couple of corrections, it's because our first go around, and then please provide any kind of input that you think makes this more useful. So this is our Ludi Committee advertisement. You'll see us bring this every quarter. I may not bring it every time here, but it will be available on our website, nationalwesterncenter.com. Is that right, Marcy? So you can pull it down, and then if you have questions about it, it'd be a great tool to use during these report outs every month. And with that, that's what I was going to do, and then hand off to placemaking unless there's questions or comments.
Any questions?
What can you tell us to help us understand what's going on with Wilmington?
The city has immediate possession of Wilmington Noir. We do have a legal proceeding that will happen in mid-August on the final payment for that building. Okay, thanks, everybody.
Which one you want? I'll do one of the other.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Jay Rankins with MIG, principal in charge of the placemaking study team. And we have some fun stuff for you this evening. You don't have to listen to me as long as normal, so maybe that's a good change up. But I am going to give you a quick placemaking schedules update, in particular what you can expect at the CAC meetings, and giving you a heads up that we are going to be looking for a couple additional work sessions, like we did a week ago last Monday. So that'll be the first piece. Second is June 18th, which was a week ago Monday. We had a really great deep dive and great turnout, actually. Not quite as well as this evening, of course, but where we did a deep dive into the public space programming document as well as the cultural plan. So I'm just going to, in a few slides apiece, give those folks who were not able to attend an idea of some of the comments that we heard. It's not meant to be exhaustive, but hopefully folks who did attend feel like it's hitting the highlights appropriately, and then let you know that our team is working on incorporating that feedback, and you'll be getting an updated draft here very shortly. And then I'll be turning it over to Beth and Chris with OV on our team to be talking about mobility, rights-of-way, and preliminary streetscapes. So on the schedule update, I have two slides here. The first looks at July and August. So July 26th is the CAC meeting about a month from now. We plan on looking at bridge alignments with you all and some preliminary concepts on the bridge, which I know John will be really excited to get into, as well as others. We're going to be looking at a stockyards plan in greater detail, as well as those character areas. So for those of you who did look at the cultural plan or were in attendance on the 18th, you know that those character areas are very important to how we organize some of the cultural and historic information, different events that happened on the site, but are very important moving forward as well. The discussion about the legacy building, for instance, there's character area 10, and that is along Betty Cram Drive between the river and the railroad. And so we're setting the course for what that looks like and feels like moving forward. So taking cues from some of the concurrent work, but looking at historic aspects, looking at iconic architecture, what does that mean on a campus like this? So we'll begin presenting some of that material to you on the 26th, about a month from now. Mid-August, so before the next regularly scheduled CAC meeting, we'd like to do another kind of deep dive placemaking work session. We'll work with Liz and team on getting a specific date as quickly as possible here so it gets on your calendar. But we'll be looking at a more detailed circulation plan. In particular, you're going to see tonight a little bit about how people are getting here by car and by bike and by transit, sort of getting to the site. But this is going to be a deep dive, giving you some updates on those pieces, of course, so we keep that context in mind. But really, once you're on the campus, how are you moving around and thinking about all the different users. So if you work for Stock Show Association and you work in that legacy building, how are you getting around? Maybe you're up on the maintenance area, maybe you're site security, or maybe you're a daily user. What would that feel like as you're moving around the campus? And then the other piece that we'd like to hit there is the preliminary public space concepts. Very much related, of course. So thinking about how we're using the space, how we're moving through the spaces, how you're accessing the arenas, accessing the barns, the legacy building, the CSU facilities. We want to begin tying in the public spaces and what that might look and feel like as well. In the regularly scheduled meeting in late August, August 30th, we'll be giving an additional public space concept update. So some refinements, but also catching everyone else up more in this kind of quick hit fashion. Giving an update on the public art master plan, and then introducing the design guideline development. What is the organization of those? What type of content can you expect in those? Looking at some examples from other design guidelines in the city that exist already. And then getting some initial input on what people think are the really important aspects that need to be incorporated in the design guidelines for the campus. September and October, the second slide of this update. Mid-September, we'd like to do an additional deep dive CSC placemaking work session. We'd be looking at zoning and design guidelines at that point. So that would be looking at the adopted National Western Center zoning that had been created, and then looking at modifications that we would like to make to that, as well as looking at the design guidelines. Again, it would be kind of an update, giving an overview of what that entails at the late August meeting, and then we actually get into the meat of it, roll our sleeves up at this mid-September meeting. Late September, site security overlay. That's pretty jargony. It's called out from our scope of work. But what that is we have a consultant on the team looking specifically at safety and security. And that's everything from where we put, maybe walls and benches and trees and buildings, and making sure that we're not creating places that are very difficult to have kind of natural surveillance, as well as cameras, gates, fencing for temporary events, permanent structures as well. And then the last piece is thinking about the police, security, fire. If there is an emergency, how are we accessing different aspects of the site? Knowing that at certain points in time we have thousands and thousands of people on the site, so how does that work? So that's all part of that site security overlay. We'll keep coming back with the public space concepts. That's obviously a very meaty piece, looking at those design concepts, so that's late September. And then October 25th, I'm assuming there'll be some pieces that need to be revisited at that point, but we know definitely that we'll be talking about signage and wayfinding. Both directional signage throughout the site for bikes, for pedestrians, for automobiles and trucks coming to the site, as well as potentially dynamic signage or other ways for the authority to actually collect revenue. So there's a revenue generating aspect of that. So it could be advertising or naming rights, things like that kind of worked into the signage and wayfinding concept. So that's the schedule update, those two slides. Any comments or questions about the schedule before I jump into the 18th recap?
Questions? None?
Okay.
We're going to have a long summer and fall.
Yes, you're going to be sick of us by that time, I think. But it's really juicy, great stuff. So we'll make it fun and exciting, I promise. The June 19th meeting recap. So we tackled two pieces, the cultural plan and the public space study. The cultural plan, what we talked about was some of the content. We gave that similar overview to what we had presented to you all just, I think, a month ago, actually. And then we talked about some of the content within the plan and sort of the nature of that. And there was a lot of people who thought, just as I think in our internal review, we had some reflections like this as well, that the historical component was pretty well captured. And you'll see in some of the comments there's actually still some pieces that people would like to emphasize more. But that future-looking component is what people are kind of really hungry for. So beefing that up, thinking about the future of the campus, all the things that are possible, adding even more sort of articulation of the vision in the master plan, and then thinking about how some of these historic elements are reused, making sure that they're not forgetting about things like the water tower, the armor admin building, all the materials as was discussed earlier with bricks and the pieces of the pens and whatnot. So for those of you who did not attend that meeting, these are kind of the key elements of the cultural plan. History of the site, reflecting on the history and how it's interpreted in the future. Really focus on the future of the National Western Center and then the Public Arts Master Plan and things like implementation. And so some of the comments that we received were, please integrate some of the historic remnants into the built environment. I think related to that, you'll see coming up on the next slide, is the idea that while it's great to incorporate those everywhere throughout the built environment, and even if we can do some walls and things like the Legacy Building and in the plazas, that there should also be a place to kind of collect this story, that you could go as a one-stop shop and hear about the history of the site, of the neighborhoods, of the campus, or the complex, excuse me. Looking for other reuse opportunities, even if longer term, like 4701 Brighton. And there was some, I guess, commendation of the 4701 Brighton, and thinking of that, we're doing a great thing with that, and can we look for additional opportunities? Liking the idea of retelling stories, thinking about trading and food was a highlight, and we want to make sure that we're telling that story enough in the cultural plan, and then obviously in the design work moving forward. Being the global center for food, agriculture, and water, and really translating that into the future-looking piece of the design concepts. Incorporation of the story into the public realm, and making a place on the future campus where the whole story is easily accessible, as I mentioned before. Celebrating where we have been, where we are now, and where we are going in the future was probably one of the best statements of the night that sort of captured a lot of these thoughts. Connecting with Denver Museum of Nature and Science and other storytelling methods and partners, looking at both these permanent and temporary installations. How can we capture more stories? The Denver Library, it was pointed out that there's a lot actually captured there. And there was an effort by the neighborhood to share a lot of those stories and document those. And so looking at that as a resource, but also maybe partnering with the library to do a better job of documenting some of the stories while we can. Sean was pointed out as a point person with NUCO and his job basically. Oh, there's Sean. Sorry, you moved over. You want to be close to the cookies and lemonade, I think. So he's really the point person on this historic piece. And so right now it's about the inventory component, looking at the historic assets on the site, but moving forward, obviously we'll be looking at interpretation and storytelling as well. And then the campus should be teaching something about life. This is a place for future generations. So those are a few of the highlights for those of you who missed that session on the 18th. On the cultural plan, on the public space programming, we talked about some of the major components of that plan and what it was intended to do. What it's really trying to do is collect all of these different source materials on what the program could be on the site and begin to narrow that a bit, but more importantly, think about the spaces. Where could these different events that have been suggested over time, really since probably before the master plan was developed, but definitely during master plan development, and you all provide a lot of input into that. Where are these appropriate on the campus? And so we talked about these very explicit kind of public-facing public spaces, but one of the big comments that I think was very meaningful was there are other spaces that don't have buildings on this site, and how are we treating those? They shouldn't just be, we shouldn't sort of relegate them to purely back of house. How do we make sure that they're still people-friendly places? So that's something that will be incorporated as we make these adjustments based on your feedback. Some of the other things that we heard is highlighting education, research, and innovation. and maybe organizing actually some of those potential programmatic elements into the core pillars of the campus. Clarifying how the spaces are connected, how do we get from point to point. So we'll be doing that in some of the revisions to the public space programming, but it's also why we brought Chris and Beth with us this evening, is they'll be talking about the mobility, sort of where we're at now. It's draft in progress, but then that will tee up the further refinement. Integrating whimsy into the public spaces, I think, was a really important comment, and thinking about how we can be playful while still focused on the mission and thinking about the future of agriculture and water and all these pieces. Seasonal agricultural demonstrations being a thing that people really want to see, not just in one space or next to one building, but integrated throughout the campus. Thinking about who's managing these spaces, which is a really important piece of, as we're putting in permanent fixtures, as we're thinking about temporary elements or those events, who's managing at certain times. And so the streets are one where there's a little bit of gray area still. They're a part of the campus, obviously, but they're also public rights-of-way. So those are some of the charges that the folks who participated in that meeting on the 18th gave us, is beginning to delineate that more fully. And then with such a large space, what are the alternative ways to move through? Chariot is one that came up in the discussion, which is just one company looking at the driverless shuttle, autonomous shuttle, which I think was brought up earlier, actually. And Beth and Chris may allude to that a little more in their presentation. Make landscape interactive. So how can we make sure it's not just beautiful to look at, but actually serving functions as far as education, research, and interactivity. Integrating business elements, so can there be apprenticeships, local hiring, career building, both in construction, ongoing maintenance, as well as events and programming. Keep landmarks like the water tower, the armor building, 46th Avenue Railroad Trestle, Sheep Bridge, and make the buildings as permeable as possible. And the last piece would be then the next steps for both of these. So we're working on refining both these documents based on all the input that we received. And then we'll be publishing that and distributing to the CAC first, of course. And then we're using these as source materials. So while, yes, we want them to be really great documents and be source material for the design teams moving forward, for the community moving forward, for people wanting to create a new event or a new program on the site, they're also informing our own work, which is looking at the development character of those character areas, integrating the reuse and interpretation recommendations into the design concepts, as well as informing those design guidelines that we'll be working with you all in late summer and early fall. That was it for my piece of the update. So I guess in particular, anyone who was participating on the 18th, anything that you felt like was a really big point of emphasis that I missed in that recap? Pretty good? Hey, you have something?
I don't know if I think it's in there, but I just want to call it out a little bit in case I'm misinterpreting this. What use the term seasonal agricultural demonstrations? Okay, is that a generic or a general term for the conversation around the fact that there can be urban agricultural productivity throughout? There was one point, and I know this was something I was really hoping could happen, is that there's a lot of places where you can produce actual food throughout the year, and that part of it is demonstrable all around the world with people growing gardens on their, and it can be serious production. And the idea was also partly that the community investment fund could benefit from revenues for that food going into possibly a restaurant on the footprint. There's a lot of ways that these things can start to create a localized economy and a scaled urban agriculture. And that, along with the possibility of the topography, having things like rain, little rain gardens and that kind of a thing. And so anyway, is that the phrase that ended up in? And if not, it is? Okay, all right.
It did end up in there. We have much more detailed notes, and I think largely because I was trying to fit this on a couple of slides, we didn't do a great job encapsulating all of what you said. The other component that I would say to that is there was the idea that maybe the stockyards maybe parts of the summer, or other places. It doesn't have to be the yard specifically, but places that they're necessary at certain times of the year for programming, that maybe those could function as garden spaces temporarily at some times too. So that was the last piece, but you articulated it very well. Thanks.
Other questions?
I think AE just needs to reference the International Food Court that Gretchen has over there. A lot of those concepts and thoughts that she has shared with the group are evident in the 1909 building, which is, from my perspective, going to be an international food court for everyone to enjoy it. And those are the exact same things that I think will be coming out of there. So I would commend everybody to take a look at it because I think Gretchen did a good job. That ties in directly what I think she brought that here.
Monique, you had a question?
I did. You used the term permeable buildings. So permeable to what? Water, people?
To people. Oh,
Okay.
sorry. To
Okay.
people.
All right.
That was the comment on the 18th, was that we're not creating fortresses, right? So we create really nice outdoor spaces. We achieve all the things that were commented on with gardens and educational elements and historic interpretation. But if there's just blank walls along these spaces, they're going to be really uninviting. And so we need to make sure that the buildings are as porous and permeable as possible. And that could be transparency, it could be roll-up doors, all sorts of things.
Mickey?
I think one of the things that was brought up was really the role of CSU, and I think it was really not sufficiently emphasized. The cultural or the placemaking. They are really an element that's going to differentiate this place from anywhere else, and it's just not there. I don't know whether they didn't participate. I think you said they were doing their own thing.
No, we meet with them very regularly, actually.
But there wasn't much in there.
In the cultural plan? Yeah, we noted that in our more detailed comments.
I didn't see it.
Yeah, I apologize for not being a bullet up there, but yeah, that's a very good point.
Other questions? Liliana?
I think just a comment. I know, thank you. The Museum of Nature and Science was highlighted as one of the sort of go-to organizations to help us think about sort of storytelling and modeling, and, all of these things. But I just want to expand on that a little bit and include History of Colorado. Obviously, other MOU partners and other,
absolutely.
Folks that are already connected with the work.
Yeah, it's a great point. I think the other partners, of course, CSU included, History of Colorado, and then not limiting it to that was another emphasis that didn't get captured in the bullets, but definitely did at the meeting on the 18th. Yeah.
Directly related to that, I'm glad you... One of the reasons that the Denver Museum of Nature and Science came up, as I recall, somebody can correct me, in the conversation is because there was a good bit of consideration about how do you actually create the immersive experience for the people coming into the campus as to the actual heritage and to what the history is and how that flows forward. And the example of a way that the experience can happen has to do with the amazing diorama concept and design and work that the Denver Museum of Nature and Science is pretty stellar at. And you can take it out from behind the glass, and there's ways to do it so that it's not, you're not trapped necessarily in a diorama per se as an isolated. And they're also very expert at temporary exhibits, which can become permanent. So as we move forward, the concept of temporary exhibits can feel very much like a permanent installation, but they're not engineering-wise. And it, in a way, accelerates the experiential content of this going into it. And I think that's a really important way to activate that direct relationship and then generate more ideas about how that can be done. So the goal was not for it to feel like the campus was, the goal was from the conversation, the campus that was infused in kind of, and not necessarily isolated into. So anyway, I just think that's something that really needs to be visible all along the way.
Yeah. The group really on the 18th, everyone who participated, I think, really emphasized that it's integrated, as you said, and not just a few standalone pieces. That it's really stitched together and sort of feels like an experience as you move through. And then I think you highlight another good point, which is kind of the temporal component, which ideally the campus doesn't feel the same every time you come back. And events are going to do a lot to that end, but temporary installations, art changing out, different interpretive elements, as you're suggesting, definitely make a big difference as well.
Mickey?
I think there are a couple of elements that may have been implied but really were not talked about, and that's really connectivity. I mean, connectivity to history and the neighborhood, physically, historically, connectivity to where the city of Denver was, what kind of influence this had on Colorado history. I think the connectivity to the river, there's very little in terms of really the connectivity to the river, the mention of the CSU river thing, but I mean that's such a critical element in what brought people here. Again, it's hardly in these documents.
Okay. Yeah, so for those of you who have not looked at the cultural plan yet, highly encourage you to. We did emphasize last time that it is meant to be the starting point. It's obviously there are books written about each individual topic in there. But to your point, Nikki, we can definitely emphasize and embellish on certain aspects that you're feeling are light now.
Other questions? Okay, next.
Okay.
Jerry?
So the last piece of our update is a little longer, actually. Apologies. But so Chris Proud, Beth Vogelsang, and Chris Vogelsang.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Chris Proud, and I work with Denver Public Works. I've been working and presented to you all previously on a variety of aspects of the mobility for the National Western Center. Beth Vogelsang, Chris Vogelsang as well. They're going to do the primary, or Beth is going to be the primary presenter this evening to give you some information. And this really is kind of a snapshot in time of where we're at on kind of the backbone of the mobility system for the National Western. And that really comes down to the streets that were identified in the master plan and the various kinds of uses that were identified for those streets as well. So what we've done is, behind the scenes with a whole host of other folks from the city, we've been working to identify exactly from a more detailed perspective, moving again on and refining away from the master plan, but exactly how we accomplish all the things you identified there. So how do we fit in the various uses within the streets for pedestrians, cyclists, vehicles, and there's a whole host of different users out here too. You've got the neighborhood that's going to be moving through this space and using all the public spaces and accessing the river has kind of been alluded to here. We've got users on the site that are going to be coming for special events and visitors. We have the folks that are going to actually be presenting. So they are bringing in equipment and other things, and we have to think about all of those users and how this system will actually support it. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Beth, and she's going to go through the details of what we've come up with so far, and then we're happy to answer any additional questions you have.
Okay, thanks, Chris. So, just move this forward. All right, so I just want to start with sort of, when we think about transportation and defining where we're going, we really don't think just about the site. We think about the entire area and the neighborhoods on either side, I-70, the whole area, okay? So we've been working with this transportation regulatory group at the city. It's primarily public works. These will be public right-of-way and public streets. And so we have worked closely with them to define what's really the framework for our transportation system. So the dark solid color within the site are the roads that will be built in phase 1 and 2. And then the dashed lines indicate those that will be built up to through full build out. So those are our core streets. Betty Cram, of course, National Western Drive to the north, the bridges at 48th and 51st, and then the additionals that are going to be there. But when we started to think about how do we start to design these streets, the first question we have to ask is, what are all the aspects that need to be addressed as we think about design? So this is our bicycle network, and what's indicated on the outside are the existing and proposed bike facilities that are planned for within the community. All right, and we're not trying to get into the details of what type of facility those are on this map, but just the idea that these are the connections that are so important and have been defined. You'll see Washington Street as a dashed line. We know right now that's planned to be a shared use path on either side, but it's not final. So the blue within the site are where our bike facilities are, and we have come up with a system that we'll talk about in a little more detail that utilizes our primary street network and then specifically connects to those facilities within the neighborhoods. So you'll see if you just started at 47th in Globeville, you can work your way across. You can head up a shared use path on Washington. You can cross at Betty Cram. You can enter through this National Western site and out the other side and utilize facilities all the way along 47th, including the crossing. And you can go as far as you'd like all the way to 4th and Colorado Station. So the idea is to create that permeability and the connections. So that's our bicycle piece.
Just a quick question about bikes.
Absolutely.
So it looks like a lot of it is going to be done in phases 3 and beyond, but a bike network, just creating bike paths would really benefit
people that want to use bikes if you're really encouraging that. And is there a way to just put in some temporary paths, like where you have the dash where it says next phases, like along 47th west of Brighton, like just for people in Elyria to get to Globeville Landing and get on the Platte River Trail or something?
Right.
I mean, is there a way to just, a temporary path? I mean,
To
or
just
is
strike
this,
something for the time being.
I mean, I know you got, but the triangle's not going to get built for.
That's right.
I mean, rather than just have a big empty side of what is that? The triangle's what, 70 acres or something? I mean,
Yeah, I think that's definitely something we can consider. Right now, it's not currently in our plan. It's not something that we're planning for.
Is there a way, Chris, to do temporary?
Well, there may be. I can't sort of give you definitive commitments on the spot, but I mean, kind of the focus for tonight is really what should the distribution of use in the streets be, and that's kind of what we're focused on. But thinking about, interim types of things, are there things that we can do that make sense and actually get to that connectivity earlier? I think we'd like to think about those and take that input as well and see if there are things we can do. So we'll take that back through Public Works.
So I have a question. I'm seeing the transit stop, and I'm not seeing any bike path to the transit stop. So am I not seeing something that's supposed to be there?
Yeah, so the transit location and the plaza that's associated with that is right off of Brighton Boulevard. And so the bike facilities that are serving that edge of the National Western and the transit location are specifically on Brighton. And we're just not in the detail that we don't have a little line there connecting you to the plaza, but that's the idea. Yeah. I mean, at this point, like I said, this is the transportation framework, and the first step in our process was to set the right-of-way and to work with Public Works to define that right-of-way and to develop the basic cross-section. And then after this has been vetted and approved, then we can get into all that finer detail. What kind of landscape, how would we do water quality, all the fun parts of our streets. So just to kind of keep us moving. Yes, sorry.
Armando, wait till we get a mic so we can't hear you.
I understand, Washington is being redeveloped and stuff like that. Right there. And then I have a hard time, and I would go with you to ride a bike on Washington Street from the 7-Eleven, 45th, 46th, all the way up to 51st, and see how many times you don't get run over by a semi. I'll ride that bike any time of day you want to. I don't care what you do there. There's been so much encouragement for 18-wheelers to come down there and catch those artilleries instead of going. The ideal concept was for them to go north, and that never happened. And now you want to put a bike path and put people at risk, public at risk.
So
I had a hard time envisioning that.
Yeah, so if you recall, we actually specifically on Washington didn't add bike paths in that initial planning phase. It was a shared use path, so it's about 14 to 16 feet wide on both sides of the street to enable, if you want to use a bike, you can make a connection. You can walk comfortably. It wasn't specifically not a designated bike facility in the road next to the trucks. And we'll keep moving here so we don't get too stuck on the bikes, right? But I mean, we also talked a lot about how do we then create that neighborhood connection? Because we want people to move north and south, and we probably need a neighborhood connection, an alternate facility on Washington, and then we need the actual South Platte Trail as well. And they all work together to serve different users. But let's keep going, and we'll keep building on these. So this is just the idea of that we have a pedestrian network, we have a lot of sidewalks, we have gaps in our sidewalks, of course, within the community, and so those would probably need to be addressed over time. But internal to the National Western site, we're setting up a pedestrian network that follows our street network, so all the streets have a very significant pedestrian environment. It's very comfortable. And we also have sort of this internal circulation. So as you come off of 51st over the bridge, you enter the site, you can make your way through the site, you can make your way across the site, you can cross the pedestrian bridge to the transit center, and you can continue into the neighborhood. So the idea being that we're going to be looking in more detail in the placemaking piece at the details of what this pedestrian connection looks like on the site, but we want to understand how we're linking out to the community next to us.
Beth, I know you want to move on, but this is a really huge point. How, what of those paths, how many of them
Are closed when the stock show's in operation?
Well, okay, so
I mean,
that's a
you don't
big
have to
question.
answer right now.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's not really a public way. It's not really a public right-of-way if it's closed during the stock show. I mean, I've made this point before.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if they close it off, that's not.
Yeah, so there are, so we have small events, large events, the stock show event, so there are many layers to this story. And on a given normal weekday, this is sort of the dynamic that you have, okay? And that's the typical. And we also have conditions for large events where some sections might require to be, we might decide there's certain elements that need to be enclosed, or we want this to be a plaza during a large event. But we also have the stock show, and the stock show conditions are unique and special to their event as well.
but they preclude public? I mean, that's, we need to
Yeah.
address that. That point needs to be made.
Yeah. Okay, so let's note that point, and we might have to come back to that. Just
Can we come back to that later on?
we can try.
Yeah, just to clarify, I think what you're getting at is internal to the site specifically, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Just wanted to clarify that there's public streets around the edges that, you know, we're still talking about how those get treated. Internal to the site specifically during stock show, your point is that's a controlled area, not a public.
Yeah, or even when the Denver Parks likes to rent out our parks for profit. So, I mean, those aren't really public events anymore. You know, there are vendors there that you have to pay to go in there. So if that's done, that's not.
Drew, Drew, Paul just left, so we'll ask this question. I'll keep it back on it, but Paul unfortunately had to go pick up his wife at the airport, so he just left, but I think we need to talk through that issue on it.
And just to add, so tonight's focus is really on the what we're building, not the how we're using it. They are both really important, but we gotta land the what we're building and the travel routes through it. It also includes the authority from an operations and maintenance perspective and the stock show for the rights that they have for their events. So that's a bigger conversation, but it's a really important one. So we're not trying to avoid it tonight, we just have to get through the what it is.
Dave.
Beth, you and I had worked on the truck route in Glowville. Have you guys worked on the truck routes for Swanson and Leary and the National Western Land?
So I think the best answer is not yet. I think that how all those operational layers come together is that for this whole area is a big piece as we go forward. But one of the things that Chris specifically is working on are the truck and operations aspect of the site itself. So do you want to just touch on that?
Yeah, I didn't bring an exhibit for that, but we've been thinking quite a bit about truck and trailer circulation, access, loading areas, staging, and those kind of things. And also, so we're the same team, right, that's also working on the pedestrian and the transit and the bike And so all those things are coming together in our thinking, but we're sort of have identified the key areas where those interfaces happen, and we're working through, I think, still like exact routing, say for stock show, right? How all the stock trailers come and where do they stage and how do they get in and how do we avoid neighborhood impacts from that and how do we avoid as many pedestrian conflicts as we can. So we're fine-tuning that also through the work we're doing on the placemaking side too, and defining the spaces a little better. So I don't have a 100% answer for you tonight, but I'm thinking that in our August deep dive we'll get into a lot of those details in a very deep detail.
Even when this starts, Drew already talked about having problems with big trucks, and in Globeville we have problems. It's only going to get worse, as we go forward.
Yeah.
I'll just say one more thing on that. One of my other charges is working with the Western Stock Show Association for event management planning during the construction period. So how trucks and trailers get routed, where parking's happening, all that. So I'll also be involved over the next 5 years with all those interim pieces as well. So we'll probably get to talk quite a bit about this, I hope. So that's my hope, and that we can kind of work together with all the needs to make things come together.
John?
First of all, let me clear the air here. I think I'm pretty much on record as not being a great admirer of Public Works, but that doesn't make any difference where we are today. We've got a situation here today, and we've got to deal with it. And we've got to deal with you, not against you. You're here to help us, and we need to be on the other side to help you. Liliana, Monique, I want you to pay particular attention to what I'm going to say, because I said it before, I'm going to say it again. I'm not authorized to speak for the authority, but I will push that line as far as I can without crossing it. We need to be acutely aware of these concerns as seated members of the authority. The other side, our authority hat goes on. We need to ensure, and it's too bad Paul's not here because he could probably answer this a lot clearer, better. We need to ensure the success of this effort, and that means moving traffic. And I will catch hell from some of my neighbors in Globeville. As before, a lot of that traffic is going to spill over to Globeville. It has for the last 100 years, as long as we've had a show or any event here. Drew, Dave, Armando, Jim, we need to get together and work with the best possible solution to the traffic effort. Mickey will have to ask you to help us as well. The impact is going to be immense. But to make this thing successful, it has to be. We need people like to drive wherever we go. So there's that problem. And we have to deal with it, and we have to deal with it up here on top of the table and make sure that all bases are covered and that everybody has an opportunity to voice their concern. We can't say, brush up. No. But the fact of the matter is, we have truck traffic. We're going to have a lot more traffic. But we need that traffic to make this thing pay. There's not going to be a community benefits effort. There's not going to be a community financial benefits if this thing is not a success. And that has to be number one. Successful operation will bring these other benefits in line. These problems are not so big that they can't be solved. We can deal with them, and with your expertise and our concerns expressed in a positive, construction manner, we can do this. I'm not afraid to take it on, and I know I can count on you guys to support. Armando, you've been in it. You're right in the middle of it. You see it whenever there's functions going through. So it has to be taken care of, and we have to put our best foot forward and work with the resources available to make this thing go. Thank you.
Thanks, John. I do agree with you, and I think that as we go, so like we said tonight, this is just step one, the framework, okay? Let's get through that. And then how we make all that work is where we'll be heading over the next months, okay? So this map here just indicates the transit. This is our station, right, our bridge. And really here, we're just highlighting all the rail lines that are serving areas, A line, Gold Line, North, the existing fixed route, and there may be additional RTD fixed route coming into the area. But what is really important here is that not only just the fixed route and the rail, but we have to assume, in order to handle all this demand that will be coming, that we're able to bring people in on shuttles, autonomous vehicles, rideshare programs, every mode that you can't even imagine yet that's probably coming in the next decade. And so when we think about that aspect of it, we have to think about how we're balancing the site. We want folks coming in to the eastern side along Brighton. We want some utilizing Washington. We want to pull in from the north where we can. So we want to balance that arrival and departure into the site, and we want to be able to handle that flux of arrivals and departures that is going to be different with every type of show or event. So these lines indicate what we're calling mobility zones. So when we went to go lay out our street right-of-way and our cross-section, we had to think about bikes, we had to think about pedestrians, we had to think about trucks and trailers, we had to think about regular vehicles, and then we had to think about shuttles and rideshare and drop-off. And what we found is that our transportation infrastructure has to be very flexible. It has to be designed in a way that it can flex to a very big footprint when we need all that capacity, and yet be comfortable and familiar when we don't need that capacity. So that kind of brings us to our sections. So I'm going to set this up, and then I'm going to let Chris talk in more detail about our sections. So what we're going to highlight tonight, just as examples, is the bridge here of over the river of Betty Cram. Betty Cram as the signature street coming into the site, really our main street, our focal point. National Western Drive coming up from the south, and this here, the intersection of those two being a very pedestrian-focused entry and gateway into our whole site. And then National Western Drive to the north up to the 51st Bridge and on really has a whole different function. So how these streets all work together to serve all this demand is really important to the overall system, okay?
Okay, so, thanks Beth. So Beth's the planner, so she kind of sets the stage, and I'm the engineer, so I'm going to talk more about the details. So I want to point out where we are. So the river is here. This is Betty Cram Drive, future Betty Cram Drive. This is National Western Drive to the south, which is basically in the same location as it is today. Okay? And this is the legacy building that we spoke about earlier today. So this is that big intersection that's really important to the site. What we've done so far by working with stakeholders and public works and various folks is try to think about how wide the public right-of-way needs to be and what goes in there. And we used a lot of actually all the previous planning that you guys worked so hard on in terms of the master plan and the community neighborhood plans and all that about how do we fit that now for real, right? So what this indicates is if you're up in the sky looking at the street, you could see what it would look like, and the colors indicate different elements that we're including in the streetscape, okay? So I'll just kind of go from left to right. So this color here, this kind of brownish color, is sidewalk. This green is amenity zone or tree lawn or space to do water quality, those kind of things. It's kind of the green space. And then these colors here, this lighter brown or orangish, those are things that you would call parking lanes, but we call them managed curb lanes. And the reason we call them that refers back to what Beth was talking about all the mobility zone areas we want to do. So these spaces are designed to be very flexible. So sometimes this might be on-street parking, sometimes it might be school bus drop-off, sometimes it might be shuttle, right, for a big event. This might be a shuttle zone. Sometimes it might be a bike corral for bicycle parking. So there's all sorts of ideas that we can come up with for how to use this space, and we think it's really important to include that space to have the flexibility to respond to changing travel patterns and needs as we go through. That said, we want these spaces to be sort of traversable and pedestrian scale during other times when we're not have big events. So I want to point out here at this intersection, so this intersection is one of the key focal points we've been thinking about in terms of design. And we've just really entered into that process right now about how does this look, how does this feel pedestrian scale, how do we keep traffic from going too fast through here, some of the discussions we had earlier today. How do we make this feel like a place where it's shared and safe? And so some of the things we've been talking about here are making, this might be a couple ideas. It might be a raised table crossing, so the whole intersection might be up at one level. That's one idea we're exploring. Another would be having different types of materials to really, that's a separate space, and make this very safe. The other thing I want to point out about the section that I didn't get to was this is what I call a cycle track, and what it is a dedicated bicycle facility. So along Betty Cram, that facility is planned to be right now on the south side, and it would be continuous all the way over to Washington Street would be where that would tie in. So it would come over the bridge, come through the site, and all the way under the underpass and connect over to Brighton Boulevard eventually. So that respects the master plan intent for that connectivity as well. We also have a dedicated bike facility along National Western Drive South, and that's on the east side. That's intended to connect all the way down to 46th, right, to make those connections into the site. So very, good width sidewalks, dedicated bike facility, amenity zone, and 2 traffic lanes with flex space, I guess, adjacent to them. That's how we're thinking of Betty Cram Drive. Sure. And that's a super important street. That's like the biggest street to us to get. We all get them all right, but this one's a big one. This connects the neighborhoods all the way through. I just also want to ask if there's any questions about Betty Cram Drive before I move on to National Western Drive. Sure.
John?
Sure.
You're familiar with the drive in front of the Pepsi Center?
Yes.
And it's divided. It has a tree lane in the middle, and this one doesn't. Is it because of space, or because I think that's a very pleasant. Actually, that about 3-block drive.
Chopper Circle.
Yeah. It's.
I worked on that.
Oh, good. Then you're familiar with it. And it's very pleasant, and it moves traffic. Of course, they have enough 2 lanes on each side, and the accessibility, parking, and buses and whatever. And it seems to work fine, Why can't we have Betty Cram Drive with that type of?
I've talked a little bit. Okay, so a couple things. From where we started, the master plan didn't have any of those kind of elements, right, along this street. So we didn't start from that place. The other reason we don't have a median divided in here is really, as you alluded to, is space. So if you remember when we did this site planning, and everything was super tight, we're trying to fit everything. CSU's pads are here, they want to have buildable space, we got our buildings here. That's one thing. The other thing is that space is hard to make dual purpose. So our edge spaces here can be used for water quality, for other things on the edges, for maybe pedestrian amenities, different things. In the middle, for in here, it kind of serves that one function of kind of creating a different space. So we're kind of also thinking about multiple uses of this space because we want to, be really efficient with using that. But that's a great point, and we do look at those kind of things to try to break streets up and make them feel a little more friendly.
Dave?
Yeah, Chris, can we build something where you can get to the river sidewalk off Betty Cram and off 51st? I mean, there's maybe not an off-ramp there somewhere.
Yeah, so I think what you're alluding to is, can we get a connection? The Pine River Trail is over here on the west side of the river. If you remember, if you guys are very familiar, it's up on top of that levee, right? So it's kind of elevated there. And what we're finding in an engineering way is it's become very challenging to find a way to connect those two at this point because of the different grade differences and property ownership. I think are the main challenges. We're still looking at it, but I'd say that this one has been difficult. 51st, we are pretty sure we can do, and we connect at 46th as well. That's the other connection. So what we've been, in terms of not knowing exactly what that final answer is going to be, I'm sorry. Oh. Okay, yeah, 51st, right. So do you see this, this space? I'll talk about National Western Drive next. But we've included a very wide shared use path on the west side, and the idea would be that if this connection directly becomes engineering, not feasible in an engineering way, that we intend to make a connection here, right, which would be a very pleasant connection and connect up either to 51st connection to the trail and also up at Race. If you remember, Franklin and Race has a connection as well. So that's kind of our plan B, I guess. If the engineering, if the bridge engineers, the structure guys say like, well, we can't make all that work without acquiring extra property or doing this kind of thing.
Guys, just, we're at beyond 2 hours and we haven't finished our agenda for tonight. So I'm looking at Tim on it. So, but I mean, this is really important, but I just want to make sure that we're continuing to keep, because it's now 7:48 and we've got, I don't know how much more you've got to cover, but Ann, you have a question?
A very quick question. Your
Okay.
lane widths are very generous. 12 width, that 14.
Oh, so yeah, so let's talk about lane widths. So this is a special case, so I'll talk about National Western Drive. In every other case, we have 11-foot lanes with 7-foot managed curb lane space. So we're trying to, that's actually a little foot narrower than what Public Works usually requires. So we're trying to slow this down. So this National Western Drive is a different kind of street, so it's a different function, okay? So it has to support the backbone of event operations, truck and trailer access, maybe staging. And if you remember from the master plan, there's the idea that we'd have 2 lanes all the time, but you'd be able to flex to up to 4 lanes to handle like big parking ingresses or trucks and everything, right? So what this space shows is, if you think of this more like 42 feet, the 42 feet is 4 lanes at some point that the uses we're talking about are, I should point out one more thing you probably are aware of. So this is our big parking structure, right? It's under the equestrian barn. So there's about 1,000 spaces planned in here. Access directly off 51st with an access somewhere in here and somewhere up there. And so we think National Western Drive is a lot different than Betty Cram in terms of how it needs to serve the site. And that's why we've developed that as a different section with different lanes. We think there's a lot different kind of vehicles using it.
Yeah, so just to that point, so remember we talked about there's all these layers. So sometimes, say during stock show, that 42 feet, be it to the 2 travel lanes and 2 managed curb lanes, might be 3 travel lanes one direction to move cars out, or it might be 2 travel lanes and staging for trucks if that's the event requirement. It also might be 2 travel lanes and a dedicated busway or a shuttleway, or a place where we really can bring a lot of, we can move this independently and bring buses and shuttles and keep them moving through the site. So that's kind of, this road really emphasizes that flexibility that we need to run this site differently depending on what's happening there. So it's really not 14-foot travel lanes, it's just a combination of 42 feet that can flex in different ways.
Yeah, and I know we're running out of time. So I just want to point out 2 other things about this section, okay? So this lighter green color here, so that is a linear water quality element. So that's a bioswale that goes all the way up to 51st and past. That's really important to the site to meet the water quality requirements, and it's a really good place because of the way the topography works. A lot of water ends up there. So that was a key piece of this. And then also this is shown, we have a shared use path here, and it's right next to sort of the open space that goes to the river. So this is a key interface that the placemaking team is really thinking about how that design works and how that flow works. And so it doesn't mean it's going to be necessarily just one big slab of concrete from here to there. I think there'll be a lot of nuance to that space. So I think that's it. I really appreciate your time. I'll answer any other questions if you have time. Otherwise, I'll come back anytime you want me. Both of us.
We have people to stop at the board.
Yeah. Just make sure that for those of you guys stop at the board before you all leave, please, on the 1909. Betty, since it's your signature street, what do you need to
And I just thank everybody so much, because I didn't know I was going to have such an important role in this. Yeah, thanks.
Okay.
Maybe Boulevard.
That is
drive.
Yeah. Tim, you're on.
Circle.
2 seconds.
Parkway.
So in the interest of time, we're going to try to race through things fairly quickly. I've asked Marcy, excuse me, to help me in just getting some materials out to you. But the first thing we wanted to talk about was the neighborhood plans, both for Elyria Swansea and then for Globeville. Separate plans. And what we're wanting to do is come back to the people who helped to develop those plans, which are those of you from the community who have over time given so much of your time to design and develop the direction that we had set to go. In short, what we're doing at this stage is wanting to get back to the community and talk about what it was that came out of the neighborhood plans. What you told us, what we heard, what we've done, and where we're headed next with the projects and how we're going. And so we set up the process to be very short on the front end of communications so that people could go to each and every station, the different city agencies or different participating organizations, to talk to them specifically about concerns they had, things that they wanted to raise, things where they thought that we were on track or where we needed to make course adjustments. And so trying to race through it, yeah, I may be finished before you get these up, but thank you so much for your help. The idea here was to be able to go through those and be able to explore more with the community. Our first event was actually this last Saturday. Candidly, we were not pleased with the job we did about outreach to get people there to participate. Nonetheless, we're going to start and we're going to drive a number of different initiatives to do that. There are 4 steps to what really came out of the neighborhood plan for Elyria Swansea. And that is that we need to be strong in our plans, connected, unique, and healthy. Strong, establishing balanced land use, developing good design, storm drainage, water quality, improving access to diverse park systems, and then access to jobs, housing, healthcare, a variety of other services. So we went through with our different stations the different projects that are there, and you will get a small handout. If you could give this one and the half-page ones, that will really go through a lot of the details around the projects, what were there and what we did. And again, in the interest of time, I don't want to do a lot here. Connected, how we connect the community from a number of things that we've just been talking about. Railroad conflicts, completing street networks. How do we make sure that we access all of the bike and mobility opportunities that we've got? So those are the things that came into Connected, and they include then a lot more detail on 47th and York, our sidewalks, streets, work that Chris Proud has been so instrumental in with Public Works, and being able to drive. What is unique came out of that neighborhood plan. So we want to showcase the history of Elyria and Swansea, create a very specific and defined identity, and really embrace the culture that's come out of all of the work that's been done and directed by the community for what we wanted to develop. What we're doing now is really around cultural preservation, your great work and participation with National Western Center in terms of identity and how we create gathering spaces and other things. Healthy.
Tim, hold on. Dave's got a question real quick.
Dave, yes, sir.
Mine's in Spanish.
Yeah. Turn to somebody who speaks Spanish, they'll interpret. Okay, again, mea culpa, I was pretty tired when I raced out. I only grabbed the Spanish language pieces, not the English ones. So because part of it is we had 30-some boards that had everything in English. You will find on our website all of the different boards, the things that we've done to complement this in English, and we also want to make that available for Liz to be able to provide to each and every one of you. Again, what you're seeing in that short document, are the different boards and the detail of what we talked about, questions that we got, where we're going and what we're doing. So I apologize for that, my mea culpa. On healthy, again, making sure that we're incorporating water quality, open space, improved street connectivity, mitigations for environmental issues that we've got. So these are the things that give a general description. What you're going to see is a little bit more detail in these documents that we'll go through and talk more specifically about the plans and what we've done. What I really want to end with on this discussion before any questions is so many of you were involved in the neighborhood plans and developing the work that we're doing here. So what we're going to be doing is more direct outreach to those of you who were participants, actually looking for one-on-one conversations that we can have with you about the things that we're doing. We want to get your input about where we're going, what we're doing, are we on track, what have we missed, and then really start talking about what are the things forward-looking that we need to be doing. By example, this plan didn't have an awful lot on housing. Now housing has become one of the major issues of the community. So we'll want to delve into and talk to each of you individually about how we are going about working on housing and expanding. We will be doing another community meeting like this with Globeville. Of course, everything will be focused to their neighborhood plans and what's happened there. And I'll guarantee you we're going to do a heck of a lot better job of outreach to make sure that we can talk with folks. So again, just trying to race through this very quickly. Are there any questions before we would go through what our next step would be? Yes, Drew.
Jim, the neighborhood plan, I was part of the steering committees of both Globeville and Elyria Swansea. That was over a year, I think almost 2 years in some cases.
Right.
We had a steering committee, we met monthly with planners, and it was passed by city council. So I'm kind of wondering, what's up here? What are you changing?
Oh, so
and what is the public process?
that's a great point. The idea is not what we're changing, but to come to you again and reconcile, are we on the right track? Are we doing the things that you had wanted and anticipated?
Executing.
So, yeah, and executing on the plan. One of the things we've heard from the community in the year that I've been here, actually 1 year and 1 day as of yesterday was my 1 year anniversary, is that people didn't know what had come out of the neighborhood plans. We did a lot of work, but we don't see any output. So the purpose here is to show you what the output is. Again, come back to you who put it together in the community. Are we on track? What are we missing? And so the idea, it's a living plan, every neighborhood plan is. So the concept is, what are we missing? What are the changes and alterations we need to make for the future? And make sure that we're on track. We want, in effect, the community hold us accountable to what you said you wanted us to do and what we're doing. That's what we're trying to accomplish with these. Does that help?
AEC.
So I sort of am going to be, I think, right in tandem with what Drew just said, because I also was at the very first Globeville neighborhood planning meeting all the way through. I wanted to be really clear that the neighborhood planning process preceded the NWC-CAC. There's a spin on it that it's presented. The Globeville neighborhood plan started in 2012, was well on its way. The strong, connected, unique, healthy innovation framework came out of the Globeville plan, and the Elyria Swansea neighborhoods, plural, benefited in that. And I think that here's what I just want to say quickly because we're out of time. It would really help if, first of all, you would get the neighborhood borders correct. This map takes a chunk of Globeville out, and I pointed this out at the presentation. The river is the, and this is a river north issue. It creates dissonance in the neighborhoods. It doesn't help. And secondly, I'm very skittish about the protocol being that individuals from the NWC-CAC are going to go out and have one-on-one conversations. It sounds to me like it's basically people from the NWC-CAC explaining what has been done, this and that, and the other thing relative to the neighborhood plan. That doesn't do anything to help us develop relationships with one another and our planning department. I would rather that we have Steve Nally, who I think is still guiding some things. He was embedded with us, and Brad Buchanan come out to meet with us in the neighborhoods. The strength of that planning process was we were meeting with the planners, with the planning department, with the parks, with the folks, and I think that the answer is definitely going to be yes and no. It hasn't happened the way we were hoping. And if there's an end game because somebody's envisioning modifying the neighborhood plans, I want people to be up front, because that was the talk on the street before this came out. So I'm very skittish about this. I think it's always fine for anybody as an individual to have an opportunity to talk to whoever they want, one-on-one and that kind of thing, but I really would ask for there to be a reset. I'd love us to have a public meeting that's more sponsored directly by the neighborhoods. There were a lot of people involved over the years, where we have our primary staff, where we've developed these great relationships out there for an open conversation where we're doing it in a generative way. So I would just ask for the protocol to be reconsidered.
Okay, so all good points, and we appreciate them. The mapping I'll look at. I'm sorry I wasn't aware of that until what you said just now. The public forum that we had, Steve Nally was there. The idea was for him to work with the community and people and to address exactly what you're talking about, go through where we're at, and then start to get into details, because different people have different things that they're very concerned about. Some about parks, some about streets, traffic flow, other things. So we wanted to give everybody the opportunity to get into detailed discussions from the community that are there. The protocol that we're doing now is to reach out to those people who were involved to help us inform what we would look at as we move forward with the community, and inform what our next community forums should look like and how we include people and take those there. To your point about the agencies, they were all here. And that was the purpose of the way that we set them up, so that each agency could address specific concerns that individuals had. And to your point, it gave you direct access to each of the agencies as we went through it. That's the intent, and that's the direction that we're going.
Respectfully, I'm talking about a relationship that happens when things aren't as compartmentalized. Not the time to discuss the whole thing. There's a difference between this strategy that is persistently not throwing people out, where you've got this. I'm really sincerely, it is not a personal animosity. It is this is one of the reasons people don't come, because of the strategy. Even when they trust neighborhood groups that are inviting them to come, there's this, and it's not. There's another way to do it. It's real late, but it's not just having a few people there from the departments. There's the dynamic of these planning processes had a holistic element to it that was different from what you're describing. And there were a lot of people that were involved, that were peripherally involved for additional conversations that could be bridged. So anyway, I don't want it to be an argument.
So, no, I don't want to be an argument, but your points are well taken. The purpose of talking to people individually is to get where we can have individualized conversations with people participating that can help and inform how we're going to move forward with this moving forward, including all of the agencies and others. So a lot of work to be done. It is late, so I'd like to move on. We can get into details. And again, these kinds of conversations are great one-offs to be able to help to inform where we need to go. Do we have any other questions on this before I try to slide forward? And again, it's very late. So we've got the Navigate North Denver map that I would ask. Thank you very much, Marcy, for sharing. So what this map is going to show you is a set of details clustered throughout the neighborhood and throughout the communities for the number of projects that we're working going forward on. This represents the 6 portfolios that NWC-CAC manages. Thanks to you with glasses on. It represents 458 total projects identified through the neighborhood plans that we're going to be participating in. There are 316 of those 458 that are already fully funded. And so what this plan is meant to do is show you just a quick description of where they're at, to give you an idea of how many projects we're talking about over the next 5 to 7 years. And so, for instance, number 25, you're going to see in a number of different places. Those are generally public works projects, streets, curb and gutter, those sorts of things. And so the idea around Navigate North Denver is to find a way that we can align all of these projects with a specific set of calendar dates and then manage what the transportation plans are going to be as we go through different construction projects. In effect, what we want to do is create a plan where all of the different agencies and partners that we have that are working on projects throughout the city all come to a centralized system that we can then communicate to the community when projects start, what the routes are going to be, how we manage traffic flow, how we manage, to Drew's point earlier, truck traffic, routing, what kind of security can we put behind them, those sorts of things. So the idea of this, you'll see on the right side of the variety of different projects that are there, but you'll get an idea of the clusters that are there and why we have to coordinate and align the design and construction for each of these that include National Western, Central 70, and others. This process, and I'm sorry, I have to slip glasses on in between. Again, aligning and coordinating a wide variety of things that include scheduling, routing, reroutes during closures, construction timing, events, theaters and arenas, National Western, when they occur, the timing of communications to the community and how we work with the community to develop what this plan is going to be. It's the first time in the city's history that we will have brought together all of these different types of projects and entities and aligned them to a traffic plan so we make sure that we're not killing neighborhoods with projects and allowing us to be able to create transportation through them. It has 3 phases. The first phase is community engagement. The second are city processes. And the third are the tracking tools that we develop when we pull them all together. The process that we're in right now, we have just identified who our vendor is going to be. We're going through the draft plans of what we're working. We expect that we will be able to get started in the work that they're doing and that we will have a complete plan a year from September. Now, up until then, we'll be working on other plans for the interim of how we manage traffic flow, all the things that I've talked about through the next year while we put the plan in place. That process will include community processes to talk about what we look at, how we do it. I'm very cognizant of what I'm told by so many people of the fatigue, the number of times we come to the community and ask them to help us and ask them to coordinate it. And I think that too has a lot to do with participation. Folks just don't have enough energy, enough time, and so we've got to find different ways that we can communicate better and through our community engagement, get participation from a wider and broader audience. Excuse me. Again, next month, what I'd like to do is just kind of conclude. What I'd like to do is bring back some of the deeper plans that we've got here for this and for the bond projects. The city in its entirety next month will be distributing what is in the first tranche, the bond projects, what was selected, when they're going to be done, its alignment to Navigate North Denver. Navigate North Denver has now converted to become Navigate Denver because we'll be using it to inform how we manage traffic flow and other things all across the city. But North Denver is going to be the first place where we're piloting what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. So next month I'd like to bring that back. We would like to have the opportunity for KMP and CDOT to come back talk about what they're looking at in terms of the start of the project, what closures are going to be, what kind of routes we're going to have available, and all the things that they're doing to help support the community as we go through that. I'm sorry that this was so quick. I'd like to get a lot more detail, but just out of time, and you guys are tired and so am I. Any other questions?
Yeah, questions?
Can you just say what you meant by the vendor, and you'll have a report, and again, what is the policy end game?
The policy end game is to be able to coordinate and align all of the projects that we do in the city, housing, events, all the construction that we've got, and align and coordinate those so that we can minimize the impact of traffic congestion and other things for the entire community. It is, again, the end game, be able to tie together all of the different projects that we've got into a centralized system so we can communicate with folks one time in the alignment. We don't do that now.
That, I think, does fulfill what the original purpose of the NWC-CAC is, in an infrastructure coordination way. So I like that. I also really would ask we separate off this, we find a better process, but what do you mean by vendor?
Well, we've got a vendor who's going to build the system that coordinates all the information we're getting from different contractors and others. So the vendor that's developing the work plan process and the systems. Then the second part of that will be the communications plan of how we will communicate that information once it's all gathered as we're going through the next 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, whatever our time frame is. 10 years for bond projects, 5 years really for Central 70, 7 years for a variety of the other projects that we've got for the city. And then National Western, of course, has a couple different phases that are going to be worked within those. So those are the end game that we're working to.
Anything else? Anything for the good of the order here tonight? I know it's been a jam-packed agenda. Unfortunately, this looks like this is what this is going to look like for the next 2 or 3 months. So I appreciate everybody's patience in all of this. And if there are any other final comments from anybody? We'll call Adios, yes. We'll call it quits.